even like Charlie Kirk said, if his daughter got the baby would be delivered.
I disagree with Charlie's position on that.
I like Trump because at least he's honest that he's a piece of shit. Like, well, he was still in the Epstein files, which I don't like.
Well,
but
is there any
other
evidence
than that,
in the files that he did anything illegal?
No, but
in some cases bombing can be good. Like, for example, I think Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, I think his brains belong all over his palace walls. But I think the most blatant and blaring example of this is just look at two different military campaigns that Israel's involved in. The war in Gaza and the war in Iran. Why does one have almost no civilian deaths and one has 60,000 now? Well, it's because Iran separates its military infrastructure and Hamas in Gaza doesn't. Hi there.
What do you think about Trump? Make America great again. What?
What do you think about Trump?
What do you think about him?
I think he's awesome.
This is a test.
I think he's awesome. What do you think about him?
I think he's honest.
Hell yeah.
I think all presidents have to be corrupt. I don't think he had to do the Epstein shit. I don't support any of the pedophilic things he's done.
Like what?
But I think
example? What pedophile?
Well, like him saying that he would date his daughter if she wasn't his daughter. Like, that type of shit's weird.
His daughter was an adult. I mean,
I've said that if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.
But he didn't
say. How the fuck did you pull that up now? How? Okay.
He didn't say if she was my daughter, I'd be dating her. He said if she wasn't my daughter, I'd be dating her. She was an adult.
No, that's what I said. But even then, that's like kind of weird. You don't think to look at your daughter that way.
Does your father think you're beautiful?
Yeah, but my dad wouldn't say that he would date me if I wasn't his.
Does he think you're a good person, and does he think that you are smart?
No.
He doesn't think you're a good person?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, I think that most fathers probably think that their daughters are smart and good people. Those are the qualities you look for when you're dating a person, right? He didn't say I'd date her if she was my daughter. He said if she wasn't my daughter. But she is his daughter, so he wouldn't date her.
So the only thing that's stopping is that she's his daughter. So why are you looking at your daughter that way?
Well, I hope that every man thinks that his daughter is beautiful, a good person, and smart. I think that's what you want. You want to be proud of your daughter, right? You want your daughter to have the qualities that you yourself would look for in a partner, right? It's the goal. It's why you raise a daughter.
Yeah, I'd fuck my cousin if he wasn't my cousin.
Okay, well, that's certainly an opinion.
That's what you're basically saying, and that's fine. Like, I don't judge.
Well, I mean, but here's the difference, though. Is you didn't raise your cousin, right? He's proud of his daughter because she has these qualities that he would look for. But you didn't raise your cousin. I mean, if you would date your cousin if he wasn't your cousin, that's fine. That's certainly something that I don't see really a problem with that. But sure.
Well, he was still in the Epstein files, which I don't like. Well, but
is there any
other
evidence
than
in
that,
the files that he did anything illegal?
No, but I'm just going based off of I heard that, and that's probably not a good thing. But regardless of whether he did something or not, on the more positive side, I think all presidents have to be involved in sketchy shit. So I think that, like, no one, like, war and bombing suck, but any president, even if it weren't Trump, like, you're not going to get elected by being a good person. So it's like, I'm not saying I love Trump, but I'm not necessarily anti-Trump, because whether it were Kamala, whether it were like Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton or whoever the fuck, all of them would have done bad shit just in different ways. So like Kamala was talking about like women's reproductive rights. Okay, cool. But then maybe she would have fucked the economy more, or like maybe, she would have further corrupted the communities and not delegated, government funding into the right places. So it's just like, I like Trump because at least he's honest that he's a piece of shit, like,
I mean, I don't think he's a piece of shit. I actually think that in some cases bombing can be good. Like, for example, I think Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, I think his brains belong all over his palace walls. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that makes him a piece of shit. I think Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, was a piece of shit. Mass murdered his own people, oppresses women, enriched uranium, passed 3.7%, tried to create nukes, shouts death to America, killed our soldiers at Tower 22 and in Erbil. Yeah, I think he deserves, like, death is where he belongs, in the pits of hell. But
Are you pro-choice or pro-life?
I'm pro-life.
Okay, so like hypothetically speaking, like if you had a daughter and like she got raped or some shit, like would you make an exception in that case? Would you?
Yeah, I make a sweeping exception for if the mother is raped. I believe in parental obligation, so I think that mothers and fathers have an obligation to take care of their children to the best of their ability. I think that obligation is born out of the fact that the father and the mother forced the child to exist. They engaged in an action that forced the child to exist. But in the situation where the mother's been raped, she doesn't have that obligation because she didn't decide to create the baby. So I have an exception. And by the way, most states that have restrictive abortion laws also have a rape exception.
Oh, okay. No, because I've heard stories and people would say like, if a 9-year-old girl gets raped, then if she's in the state of Texas, that she has to deliver the baby, and I'm like, it's like I do get it if two adults decide to have raw sex and you get pregnant, that's your fault because there's literally prevention. If you don't want to have a baby, then wear a condom. I just think that with the conversation about pro-life and pro-choice, a lot of people are just so ignorant, and like even like Charlie Kirk said, if his daughter got raped, the baby would be delivered. Like things like that I think are really disgusting. But as far as just like, hey, win, like play stupid games, win stupid prizes, people need more consequences. We have way too many easy outs in America, so I get it.
I disagree with Charlie's position on that. I think that Charlie's position on that was probably based on his faith, his belief in Christ, and on a religious level, I do think that children should not be aborted, regardless of whether they're conceived out of rape or out of consensual intercourse. But in order to legislate something, you have to be able to be consistent in the reasons why you're legislating it. And I don't see a consistent reason that's not based in faith to do that. So it's never going to be an argument winner. And I think that in order to end the massive majority of abortions that happen in the United States, which people like me view as an atrocity, I think the best way to do that is to have a consistent argument that makes sense and people can digest from a secular perspective. And if we don't have that, we'll never win the argument.
Interesting. Well, I appreciate your perspectives, and I think that you have a good head on your shoulders. I am currently still kind of trying to figure out where I am on the political spectrum. Like, I think I used to be liberal for a while because I live in New York City and I don't want to get canceled.
Sorry. Like.
Yeah. I mean, like there's parts of the liberal ideologies that I do slightly agree with. Like I think people can express themselves how they want, but like I'm not outright liberal. Like I support they, them. Like if my son was gay, I'd probably be a little disappointed. And I wouldn't say that I'm outright conservative, but I'm kind of just trying to figure out where I am. Like at this point, even with Palestine and Israel, like my dad is Jewish, so I have Jewish family, and like, it's a really weird place because it's like, I don't support civilians getting bombed, but then it's like, okay, maybe people are lying. Like, I don't know what to believe. So this conversation helps me learn.
Well, I've got a lot. Israel's actually one of the things I talk about the most. I actually have, I have a cross here, and then this is a bullet casing from October 7th that I picked up at Kfar Aza myself, outside of one of the villages that was massacred on October 7th. So this is a bullet from the massacre. Interesting, the civilian casualties. I think the problem is that civilians always die in war. It's just a fact of war. Every war in human history has resulted in civilians being killed, and it's unfortunate. Look at like what's happening in Iran, for example. In Iran, Israel is heavily involved in the bombing campaigns, but there's very few civilians being killed in Iran. And the reason that there are very few civilians being killed in Iran, despite the fact that, if Israel just wanted to mass murder Muslims, Iran is a very target-rich environment. It'd be very easy to do this. But they're not. And why is that? The most obvious reason before me is, in Iran, despite the fact that I think Iran is mostly a terrible, horrible regime, they do one thing right. And that thing is that they have military bases. So if we strike a military base, very low likelihood civilians are going to die because their infrastructure for civilians and their infrastructure for the military are separated. They're not in the same place. Whereas Hamas in the Gaza Strip, they have a very small territory and they have 0 military bases. There's not a single military base. So they work out of the same buildings. They host their military out of the same buildings that civilians sleep in. So in order to strike them, you have to strike civilians, which makes it puts Israel in an impossible situation where they drop leaflets and send out mass text messages and mass phone calls to civilians telling them, get out of here, we're going to bomb it. And what that does is it tells Hamas, okay, they're going to bomb us, and then they leave too, or they lock the civilians in the building. And Israel settles for, well, we might not kill the terrorists, but at least we destroy their infrastructure and we save civilian lives. And Israel has done that repeatedly. The death toll is not that high compared to other modern armed conflicts, like Russia, for example. When they invaded the Ukrainian city Mariupol, they killed 30,000 people in the first 30 days, which like like February of 2024 was like the total death toll of the war in Gaza. Just in the capturing of one city, Russia killed 30,000 people, and experts estimated that it was 5 times that. Mass graves, the whole works. So I think it's pretty low compared to other modern armed conflicts, but I also think their reporting is bullshit. I think the number probably is maybe roughly right, but their demographic breakdown, like women and children, totally bunk. Yeah. Dr. Abraham Weiner, he's this data scientist at Penn Wharton, did an analysis, and he found there was no correlation between the deaths of women and children. There should be. Presumably, when women get killed, they're with their children. And there was a negative correlation between the deaths of, presumably, again, family units are together when they get bombed. Why is there a negative correlation between the deaths of women and men? They were also reporting that there were no male civilian casualties, which is impossible. So a lot of statistical improbability in the death toll. I think the reporting was false, and I also think that it was just impossible to fight in a war where the civilian and military infrastructure aren't separated. And they had to fight in the war because they were attacked and 1,300 people were killed.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is other countries don't have as high of a death toll because of the fact that they have separate civilian and military places.
Yep.
And so that's why people are dying more often, not because they're necessarily trying to target civilians, but because they have no choice in order to get to the Hamas.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so that's why, because people are saying that they're hiding underground and stuff, and people are saying, like, if I'm being honest, I'm not fully pro-Hamas either, only because, like, I guess regardless, they would die and they don't want that, so they have to run, but, like, they're still using the Palestinians as a human shield, and I never understood what that meant when I heard it. And then now that I'm thinking about it, and when you're describing it, it's a literal human shield because they're hiding underground.
Yep.
And, like, the death of these people is like their sign to, like, run. Like, I don't know, it's their protection.
It also gives them something to, like, in Gaza they have a martyr culture. So it's like if you die. So the difference between, like, the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority, there's 2 different Palestinian territories, the West Bank and Gaza. In Gaza, they're run by Hamas. That's their government. And Hamas is the Islamic resistance movement, where the PA in the West Bank, they're the Palestinian Liberation Organization. They're a national struggle. The Hamas is a religious movement. Their government is religious in nature, not secular. And so they've convinced their people that it's righteous to die a martyr. So if you die, in defense of Islam, you are, you've died a righteous death or whatever.
You go to heaven, yeah.
Right, exactly, and you're rewarded in heaven and all that. So that's what they're convinced of. So, like, these people don't even necessarily not want to die. And the same thing with their children. If you die a martyr, you die a righteous death, and that's what they're convinced of. So Hamas is also operating above ground in civilian infrastructure too. So I think the most blatant and blaring example of this is just look at 2 different military campaigns that Israel's involved in: the war in Gaza and the war in Iran. Why does one have almost no civilian deaths and one has, I don't know what it is, 60,000 now? Well, it's because Iran separates its military infrastructure and Hamas in Gaza doesn't. Iran, everything bad about them, the one good thing about them is they don't hide behind their civilians.
And so how do you feel about some of the Israelis that mock the deaths of the Palestinians? Because the thing I don't understand is if it's really just the government versus Hamas and not the people, and people dying is kind of inevitable, but not necessarily, revengeful, then, like, what was I going to say? Like, what about all the people that are like, oh, I want to kill 5 Palestinians?
Yeah.
The people that, like, what about them?
If there's any Israelis who do that, I would just say those people are bad, and they don't, of course, represent the whole government. Like, if I say I can't wait to see more dead Iranians tomorrow, that's just my opinion. That's not reflective of the administration or the government and what they're doing. It's just one guy's opinion. I say things frequently like, I'm super glad that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's entire body is sprayed all over the walls of his palace. I think it's a good thing he's dead, and I mock his death. I think that he's
who is that?
The supreme leader of Iran. Total piece of shit. Murdered his own people, oppresses women. Terrible person. Hangs people routinely for, like, minor crimes. Terrible person. I think it's a good thing he's dead, and I make jest of his death. But that's not the position of the government, even though they're the ones who killed him. So I think that the opinions of some people are not the opinions of everybody. I get a lot why the Israelis spit on Christians at the Western Wall. I've personally been to the Western Wall, and I held a Bible in my hand and had a shirt that said Christian on it. Nobody spit on me. A little Jewish kid actually came up and asked for a photo with me.
Oh, nice.
So, and it's usually the kids that spit on people, right? It's dumb little kids, and they go to jail or juvie or whatever the equivalent is. But it's very rare, and they're not representative of the entire country.
Makes sense. It's kind of just like how in America there's like hoods and stuff, and there's ghetto people.
Sure, yeah.
But that doesn't describe America as well.
Yeah.